Good. You know, what really helps is if I actually join the correct meeting and don't try to join last night's commissioners meeting.
That will help. Absolutely.
Yeah,
We're glad
couldn't
you're
figure
right.
out why it was fighting me so much. And then, yeah, okay.
Well, good. All right. Well, then let's call this meeting to order. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Cumberland County Finance Committee on October 13th. It is 5:32. We'll go ahead and for anybody who may be new or watching live, we'll go ahead and just introduce ourselves for those who are on the committee. I'll start with myself and just give your name and where you're out of or where you're from. Dustin Ward, select board member from New Gloucester.
Susan Ortonis, Cumberland County Commissioner with District 2.
Paul Truog, Bridgeton.
I'll go. I'm Don Brewer, the Human Resources Director here at Cumberland County.
I'm Jocelyn Layton, and I'm a District 1 City Councilor in South Portland.
I'm Lee Pratt, and I'm the Town Council Chair of Gorham.
Jim Gailey, County Manager.
Alex Kimball, Deputy Manager of Finance and Administration.
Leaves just one. Bob. Oh, Bob, you're muted.
Okay, Bob Vale, Cumberland.
Awesome. I think that's everybody. Next on the agenda, public comment. I wanted to just make sure we had an opportunity to read or to make note of any public comments there may be. I'll ask Jim. I didn't receive any specifically. Jim, did you have any public comments that came in?
No, we have not. I'll keep on checking my email during the meeting, just in case.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I appreciate that. Yeah, and we would encourage anybody with public comment to go ahead and reach out to Jim, you directly, and provide that to you, correct?
Yes, Gailey@cumberlandcounty.org.
Excellent. All right, seeing as there's no public comment, we'll sort of close public comment, but if there are others that come up, we can certainly address those. Next item on the agenda is something I wanted to add just to allow all committee members to have input on the rest of this evening, the rest on this agenda. So I just put amendments to the agenda. We'll open it up and see, is there any amendments that the committee members would like to make in terms of the agenda that was presented before you? All right, so far so good. All right, seeing none, no motions, then we'll leave it as is. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. Did we all get a chance to look at those minutes from September 29th?
Yes.
Yes, Jocelyn, question or just a yes? Yeah.
Actually, I know I had a question. Thank you, Dustin. I just wanted to say that it says that I'm District 4 in the minutes, and I just want to make a correction that I'm actually District 1.
Oh.
Jocelyn, I think that is in reference to your county District 4.
Oh, never mind then.
Not City Council District 1. Yeah.
Thank you. That makes the sense. Okay, never mind. It's all good.
No worries, because I was going to say, yeah, I have information here that would also be incorrect, but okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Any other additions, questions on the minutes? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September 29th of our September 29th meeting in 2021. Bob, I see Bob has made the motion. Do I hear a second or have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lee. I will take a roll call vote unless there's additional discussion. All right, see no discussion. Let's take a roll call vote. Lee?
Yes.
Bob? I see the hand. Paul?
Yes.
Jocelyn?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Motion carries 5-0. We're going to approve those minutes. All right, on to the overview of the information we had requested from our last meeting. I I appreciated, Jim, you going out and getting all the information, especially what was provided in the packet. Extremely helpful. I'm just curious, did you want to do sort of an overview of everything in there? Did you want to take it? I have it in my vision was just to take it piece by piece. I have some questions on each thing, but if you had a presentation or something that you wanted to address first, that may answer some of our questions. So wasn't sure how you wanted to present that or how you'd want to let us handle that.
I think Alex and I talked today, and we would just make ourselves available for questions. We could take piece by piece. That sounds like an appropriate way of going about it. I would like to make mention that we have asked Don Brewer, the county's HR director, to participate tonight, just in case there are any questions. As you know, a lot of this information was heavy on the benefits and salary side of things. So if there are any questions that maybe Alex and I can't answer, Don will pitch it for us and jump in. But
Awesome.
wanted to make you aware of that.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Don, for being here. We try not to put you on the spot too many times, but I know you probably will be with the questions I have at least. So yeah, we'll just take it piece by piece. We'll start with the enterprise accounts, specifically on those, and I'll open up the committee to ask any questions that you may have. There were 6 total, but that doesn't mean we have to go in any of those specific orders. But I just opened up the committee. What were any questions that you may have on what you saw in terms of the enterprise accounts information? Yeah, Paul.
It may just be me, but I just got the enterprise fund information.
Oh, you did? Oh,
I just got it this like minute.
We sent out another copy of the enterprise because Alex's copy this morning did not, it seemed that the photocopy had cut it off. And so we were fearful that it cut it off for all of you, but there should be the enterprise same pages within your packet that you received last week. My packet was cut off, but we played it safe and resent it.
So Paul, do you need a few minutes to sort of look those over? So in the agenda packet.
We can just keep going. I don't think there's, that's fine. We can just keep going.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let me continue on. Questions on, again, other questions on specifically the enterprise accounts in any order that folks may have them. Feel free to raise your hand or shout them out. If not, I have a few that I'll ask. All right, let me ask, I'll start off with a couple questions. So looking at the sheriff enterprise accounts, the law enforcement accounts, there are what I noticed, let me look again, summer contracts. What are those specifically? And I apologize, in a virtual world, I'm going to bounce back between screens, which will probably shut my computer right off. But it said summer contracts. What are those, or to explain to me what a summer contract is or what it would include?
Want me to grab that, Alex?
Either one of us can take that one.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one. I'll take. Summer contracts are contracts that we work with communities for portions of the year. For instance, we have a summer deputy on Fry Island that usually runs from Memorial Day to Labor Day. We have a deputy up on the Naples Causeway for around the same period of time. We have deputies out on Long Island and Shabig Island during the Memorial Day to Labor Day time period. So those are examples of the summer contracts.
Gotcha. How long have those been going on? That's been a traditional type thing, or those just came into being in the last few years?
Those have been, some of them have been for a number of years. The Naples Causeway is within the last year or two. That's probably the most recent one that we've signed on to. I think the Fry Island might be about 4 or 5 years old.
I think the Long Island might have been the longest running, but Shabig Island's been going on since Shabig became a town, which was, I was there for it, 2007.
Okay. The other question I had too on that, I noticed there's SRO contracts for Lake Region and SA number 15. Those are county deputies, county sheriffs. What officer is in those roles?
It is usually a deputy that's on the force, and it's as it's a union position, it's a bidding. So deputies are able to bid for those positions.
Oh, okay. So, other questions? Yeah, Bob.
I have a question, and this may be more policy related than finance related. But if I look at the top there of Harpswell, for a sheriff to go to Harpswell, he has to pass through 6 different communities that have full-time police forces. And it seems to me that there would be an elimination of that position and have Brunswick pick that service up. It just, it's a bit of a stretch to think that we're sending somebody from Portland every day in a cruiser all the ways out to Harpswell when Freeport, Cumberland, Falmouth, Yarmouth, Brunswick all have police departments. And frankly, I would think that Harpswell could be enticed to contract that services with Brunswick. But anyways, that's my thought.
Thank you, Bob. Jim, comments? Anything you want to add, or Alex, and enlighten us a little bit? Why would
Unless
we?
Jim
Why would
wants to
other?
go.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is one big difference between the sheriff's deputies and most police forces. The deputies are typically stationed relatively close to whatever town they serve. So the vehicle stays with them. It is essentially their roving office. They don't come back to the sheriff's office on a daily basis like a police force would. And that is because the country is so decentralized. Think of some of these towns, Harrison, for example. That's a long way from the law enforcement center. So they are stationed out there. Same thing occurs. Typically deputies who live closer to places like Harpswell, which definitely is a stretch, bid on those positions and the Marine Patrol positions. But that being said, it's not wrong that, that certainly that kind of a shared setup could occur with another police force. It has occurred elsewhere in the state.
Thank you, Bob. Good question. Other questions? Yeah, Jocelyn.
Thank you, Dustin. I had a question about, there was a couple things that I saw have like the outside civil deputies, and there's a period, but there's no employees. And I guess it's less about that, although that does interest me. But then there's a domestic violence grant, and there's numbers for this, but there aren't any employees. What does that mean?
I can take that too, I guess. Those are two that have we've kept in there because, I'm sorry. Those are two different things. The civil deputies we've recently moved to do away with and fold them into the civil budget. So they used to be out as an outside enterprise, but because there is a history there, we've left it in there. So I sort of debated taking it out, but I wanted to show that used to be its own item and is no longer its own item. The domestic violence grant is a different story. What is occurring is that is managed by an employee who is a general fund county employee and a member of the executive department, and she works on a bunch of other statewide and regional domestic violence positions. But what she does is oversee a number of sub-recipients of that grant who are then out there performing the services for it. So there's no full-time position attached to it, even though there is the dollars. And the good news is she just got that grant refunded. That was a real question mark for us. So that was a big, big win that just occurred.
Great. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Good question. I had that one as well. Other questions? I believe I had down here the cross insurance. There's a lot of questions I have about cross insurance, and I think I may, if you want to highlight them, I'm more than happy to kind of hear that, how that enterprise fund may work. But I know that I would want them to come in as well and maybe explain that process. But if you want to give any sort of insight to that, I'm more than happy to hear that as well.
Can I add to that before you go into it?
Yeah.
I also had some questions on that, and it would be helpful to me if you could actually maybe reconcile back to the audited financials, which show, I guess, like the grand totals. They have expenses in the last period of, 9.8 million and revenue of 7.1 million. Maybe you could relate that to the numbers that we're looking at in the budget package.
Jim, do
Not
you want to
dollar
take the
for
general and
dollar,
I'll
but
take the, sorry?
I said not dollar for dollar, but just sort of how it works.
Yeah. You want to go for the general and I'll go for the specific on that one, Jim?
Go for it.
All right. The problem that we run into with Cross Insurance Arena, and it's a real struggle for me with this budget, is Cross Insurance Arena is functioning on a fiscal year basis. So when we put it into the audited financials, we're combining up their fiscal year with our calendar year. What I do is I make a best stab at it when I put it into this to try to go into there. That being said, the other piece to this is I'm combining up their budget versus their actual on here, comparing year to year. Yeah, it's a struggle to figure out the best way to sort of put this into the budget to show it for us. So I think when you talked about that 9, you were talking about the prior year, which was 1920. Yeah.
It may be interesting for the committee to hear from the general manager of the Cross Insurance Arena, because this is a budget that's a very unique budget in how it's put together. It's really forecasting out over a year's time, and really, but when it's being developed, it's really forecasting out probably 16 months to determine the type of acts, events that the center would hopefully attract. And that is the basis for the revenue generation. The revenue generation is then used to build off the expenditures. So there is a trick behind developing this budget, and it may be worthwhile. And we probably won't have time, maybe next meeting, because you got 5 departments coming in. But if there was a meeting after that, it may be worth just hearing how this budget is created and the philosophy behind it all, because it is very interesting. And I think the finance committee will learn a lot about the nuts and bolts of the arena.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, Bob.
Just a quick question. Does the Civic Center pay for itself, or do we pay to keep the lights on there?
There still is a subsidy that we have to build into it, yes.
And how much is that?
I think this year we're proposing about $560,000, if I remember right.
Yep.
And if we back up over a 10-year period, has it ever paid for itself?
Yes, it actually paid for itself up until, I would say, maybe 2013, when the arena went dark because of the construction, the renovations that were done back in 2013, 14. And when it opened back up and the Pirates came, I think they came back for 1 year, but then they left. The arena has had to have some subsidy put into it since that time.
Is there an expectation that we will turn the corner and we'll have a plus column?
Well, we were on the hopeful side back in 2020, that we had a good first half of the year, and that spring from March to June, we had probably 15 acts, and we had acts that were going to bring in some big dollars and a lot of butts in the seats. Really, one of those acts was Bob Dylan. That would have definitely sold out. But we were 24 hours from announcing that show, and the pandemic hit. So we never announced a show. So we would have gotten close that year. Whether we would have closed the gap completely, maybe not, but that was probably going to be the closest that we were going to get for the preceding 6 years. I will say that Melanie, the general manager up at the arena, has done a fantastic job booking shows. A lot of shows are going to be coming in the doors after the first of the year. It takes some time for these shows to get going and get on the road and a schedule going. So it is going to be a very busy spring, late winter, spring for the arena, on top of the 36 hockey games we have for the Maine Mariners.
Paul, go ahead.
I read the annual report piece of the arena, and it wasn't clear to me if Spectrum, under their managing contract, was the one that was making building improvements, or they were just writing sort of the annual report, but really it was Cumberland County that was making, they had a list of projects that they did. Is that part of their contract? They pay out of the money that we give them, or is it really we pay for all the different upgrades and repairs?
We pay for all the upgrades and repairs. When the general manager and I work on the budget in the spring, part of the budget we look at is capital needs. And so we funnel that through the budget process, and we fund the capital, but the staff up at the arena takes the lead on implementing the improvements. This year, there's no capital being proposed for the arena.
Any other question? Yeah, Jocelyn.
Thank you, Dustin. Just wondering about the ARP funding. Has that been helpful to the arena?
We are looking at spending some of the money at the arena on lessons that we learned when we were working with the medical center last winter, actually all last year, and particularly right after the first of the year when numbers really increased at the hospitals around here. We were working with the hospitals for creating an alternative care site at the arena because hockey was canceled. We didn't have ice. And so we learned a lot of our deficiencies on creating sheltering in the arena. And so what we're looking at is creating some kind of airlock for about $75,000 to close up the Zamboni tunnel so that when you open up the loading docks, you don't have a big rush of cold air coming out of the loading docks right into the bowl. And we were also looking at putting a generator up there because the existing generator is only for security lighting to get people out of the building. And in case of a power outage, we need to have a little bit more juice up there if power goes out, if we have sheltering happening in that arena. So those are the two projects that we're looking at.
One other piece to it is there is a revenue loss component to the ARPA funding, and if needed, we'll use that to offset an amount that basically can pass muster with the ARPA eligibility formulas.
Good deal. Good questions. Any other questions on enterprise accounts? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, is there and maybe I missed it, like I said, I just got that enterprise report, but is there a summary of all the different grants that Cumberland County received and how they were applied? What use was made, how much, this is how much money came in under this program, this is where we divvied it out.
Yeah, I can answer that. I think it's, let me see, it's page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Page 6 is a good spot for that. It starts with the Community Development Block Grant Program. And then below there's the grants that we typically have ongoing or that we have ongoing at present are listed. That's the domestic violence grant, which we've had going for years and years and years. Up top, the drug-free communities, which is actually winding down this year. This will be its last year for it. There's the medically assisted treatment grant, which comes through the state. That's to aid in really catching as many inmates as possible when they come into the jail and offering them medically assisted treatment at a much higher rate than has occurred in the past. In the past, they've only done maintenance on that if somebody was already on that program. And then the next one is called the COSAP grant, and that's basically a grant that targets specific inmates and tries to provide them services to assist them when they leave the jail and in an attempt to reduce recidivism, kind of one inmate at a time. And those are the ones we've got going on.
There are other smaller grants that are not including this. Sometimes we might get a $15,000 highway safety grant to do OUI checkpoints or speed traps, things like that. Those grants are hit or miss, and so we don't really book them in under enterprise funds because they're kind of one grants that we spend down and they're done. Versus these grants that Alex just talked about, of more funding a year-long program or service.
Okay, I guess I was just thinking that you would have received, in particular this year, more grants than, but.
Well, there's ARPA.
Well, there's under the top portion of that, you have the CDBG-R, which is the Recovery Act fund. So that $2,745,000 does include some additional federal funds that we did receive through the CDBG program. And of course, we got $50 million for ARPA. So, but that's not shown here.
Other questions on enterprise funds? All right, seeing none, we'll move to that department staffing, or what's in your packet is listed as department budget positions. Any questions on those specifics or what you saw there? Yeah, Bob, go ahead, kick us off.
My immediate reaction was going through this. It seems like it's a fairly stable workforce. It doesn't seem to be a lot of fluctuations one way or the other. So I guess in some ways that's a good sign. I think, based on the population of Cumberland County, we've seen some growth, but it's not, not significant like other parts of the country. So I think that's good for budgetary planning, having a stable workforce. I know that we have some line items there that, in the jail, trying to fill positions there, but I was pleased to see that there wasn't a lot of swings. So I think, it allows me to get my hands around, next year and the following year, having a benchmark.
I resonate. Yeah, absolutely. Other questions, other thoughts? I'll ask specifically, under deeds, I noted that clerk 2, over the last few years, you lost one individual, and am I seeing that correct? Clerk 2 dropped down to 5. Have you noted that, or have you noticed that the work or the influx in terms of deeds has diminished? Like, is there a plan to increase that again to get back to those levels, or do you feel that the work is comparable where you don't need to go back to 2018 levels?
The biggest, the deeds is an interesting story because I'll say in 2021, I think Alex can agree, we're only really 9 months through the year, and we've probably had the busiest year that deeds has ever had. And so what the difference is that the technology. Deeds and other documents are able to be filed online now. And so it's not an in-person item anymore. As you just rewind 12, 15 years ago, and you would have had 30, 40 people in the registry of deeds all doing research. All that research is online, and people are doing it at their homes or in their offices now, and that they can record things online too. So we are up around 75% of all the documents that go through the registry of deeds are recorded online now. We were hovering around 50%, and with the pandemic, that has shot up to 75%. And we're going to probably stay right in that range, if not go higher. Just to give you an idea, it wasn't that long ago that the registry of deeds had 17 people in the office. So it has been a reduction in workforce in that department because of technology. And I think we have a very good group of individuals down there, and we're at the right staffing level for the work today.
Excellent. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Bob. Yeah, go ahead.
Explain to me what the planners do in the emergency management agency.
Sure. They are not your typical planners that you might see at your town hall in terms of doing subdivisions and site plans, and land use. They're more about planning for potential disasters, or whether they're natural disasters or man-made disasters, all hazard planning, things like that. Preparation in making sure that the towns around the area, as well as county staff, are prepared to address hazardous situations that occur from a variety of issues that we have, or potential issues that we have throughout our county.
Like, what if we all have to bug out and work from home for months on end?
Good
So,
question. I had the same one. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
so I'm assuming that the coordination at the local level is with the fire chief of the local communities.
Yeah, most of all the communities, I would say all the communities have a point person, whether it's the fire chief or a deputy fire chief, that is the local EMA director. And those are the individuals that our staff interfaces with in case we need to support them. The local EMA director in the community is the front line of defense. Our staff go in and prop up and add capacity to the local effort. And we also are the resource to garner any additional resources that are needed from the state of Maine or other entities in support of what the local EMA director needs to help mitigate the issue that they're dealing with. In a sense,
Now
that the logistics.
I was going to say, so that work, one planner can oversee, that's enough work for that one planner, or is that a position where it would really require maybe two because of the number of disasters that you're planning for?
Well, I'm going to take a quick look at the job classes there because they have changed over the last, I'd say, 24 months, because right now we have 3 planners, and that's correct what's in there. So we have 3 planners, and they team themselves up with the LEPC planner and the deputy and the director, and they're the support network for the local town's efforts.
Excellent. Okay.
I know right now that the planners are working with 3 towns in developing the town's all hazard plans. And those all hazard plans are important because if a town doesn't have an adopted all hazard plan, and say we have another Patriots Day storm or a storm like that, and there is significant damage to a community, FEMA's going to come in, and there's going to be a request from FEMA for reimbursement for the damages. If a town doesn't have an all hazards plan that's adopted, they could be ineligible for FEMA funds.
Wow.
So I know right now we're working with 3 communities within the county to get their plans up to snuff so that they can be adopted.
Interesting. All right. Wow. Yeah, Bob.
So again, this is maybe reaching inside the pie, but I will bring it up. We as a municipality, and I know a lot of municipalities, are facing shortage of staffing in fire and rescue. And so when I look at emergency management and policing, I'm wondering if the focus needs to be changed, instead of having a local police force or a local fire department, that we start to regionalize those services. In my mind's eye, I can save my municipal dollar, tax dollar. I may pay a little bit more in my county dollar, but consolidation of services, I would think, would be less management, more boots on the ground, and just a better use of resources. If you're trying to staff a fire truck, and you as they say in Pownell, we got too many trucks and not enough people to drive them. So
Yeah.
I wonder if those conversations are happening, and again, reaching inside the pie, but I want to bring that up.
No, those, in particular, the fire side of things, those discussions have happened over the last 20 years. I'll be perfectly honest with you, they don't get too far because there's a lot of turf to protect in some of these towns. And so you don't really get too far with, on top of those towns that have their own fire service. You also have towns that have volunteer firefighters, and those volunteer departments tend to be independent from town office, though they are funded by town office. So, so you have two dynamics. And even though the county has, and I would say it's more of a discussion that's happened up in the Lakes region in the past, it really hasn't gained a lot of ground because, as you can imagine, in the fire service, there's a lot of history and tradition, and they really haven't been, at least this time, willing to talk about merging and having, in a sense, county fire districts and consolidating. But you're absolutely right. There's a shrinkage of individuals to go around. What you find is that you find a lot of the full-timers at the South Portland and Portland's and Westbrook, they're doing per diem work up into the smaller communities when they're not working their shifts in the larger communities. So, but the field is definitely growing small, and those towns that rely on volunteer firefighters, it's not like it was 20 or 30 years ago when everyone's working within their community. People are traveling great distances to go to work, and they're not able to respond to those calls during the day. And so there's a lot of coverage lacking, at least in the day right now.
I will say for Bridgeton, that idea would gain absolutely zero traction.
Mm-hmm. You're not the only one.
Yeah, Alex, were you want to?
Sure. And just to sort of tack on to what Jim's saying, obviously here at the county, we're all about trying to find new ways to provide regional services. And if we were to go back, say 6-7 years, a lot of our conversations tended to be about the ability for that to possibly save tax dollars. And that hasn't necessarily gone away. But what's really moved to the front of a lot of these discussions, and we all know this, is that lack of staff to go around. That regionalization may pick up more steam, not so much because of the dollars, but because one way or the other, there simply aren't enough of these quality employees around, and regionalization is the only way to go.
Bob, yeah.
Just one more last stab at this one. The town of Cumberland and the town of North Yarmouth are getting ready to begin the conversation of a combination force and in relationship to, we're not going to bring the fire departments into this. This is going to be a political decision based on economics. And I think that's the focus, that if we want to move this forward, we have to, I challenge the commissioners and the county manager to develop a budget that shows folks the potential for cost savings and, make it a political decision and not a turf war.
Instances, Bob, and you bring up a good point, but in some instances where you have a lot of volunteer departments, and then you all of a sudden you turn them into full-timers, you're going to start seeing an increase in costs in those areas. But you're getting 24-hour coverage now. That's going to be more sustainable than the volunteer departments that have to call in 6 or 7 other departments during a day to put a house fire out just to get the bodies at the fire.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to continue with the volunteers. I don't think you have to throw them out with the wash.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, from a point of ignorance, if you will, looking at a county budget for the first time, and I want to make sure that we're being proactive, so that let's utilize the dollars we have, the tax dollars we have. Let's make sure that they can stretch as far as they can, and that there's opportunities for savings. I think it's incumbent upon the county to reach out to the locale, the locals, and say, hey, do you want to save some money? This is how you do it.
Bob, I appreciate you stating that, and it's good to get that out there. I do hope discussions continue and in the right direction. And I'm afraid of how far we'll get squeezed before we sort of come to our senses, but I appreciate that. Absolutely. Any other questions, comments on this piece, this section? All right, let's quickly move to payroll and benefit scenarios. That was that next section. I'll leave it open. Any comments, questions on this? And this was part of, I think we had asked for sort of a percentage of salary and how benefits work, which this is really helpful to sort of see how someone's salary could stack up with their benefits as well. So I do appreciate this being thrown in there. But were there any questions on it or any clarification? Yeah, Jocelyn, go ahead.
Thank you, Dustin. I was just wondering, and if it's in here and I didn't see it, sorry, but was there a COLA this year for any of the employees?
Yes, we have a 3% COLA budgeted in.
Great, that's great. And was there any hazard pay for your front of the line or, front first responders like firefighters and that kind of thing? Was that also included in this budget?
No, we over the last year, we have only had maybe 2 or 3 instances, and they've been probably a month and a half long each instance where we've paid hazard pay, and that's when we've had some issues down at the jail with the jail being shut down and having a COVID exposure down there.
Mm-hmm.
The corrections officers are the only ones out of the 400 employees that have received any type of hazard pay. And we're currently paying them hazard pay right now because we have an outbreak again in the jail. And that will happen and end October 31st. We started it up around the 1st of October, and it'll be 1 month.
Okay, thank you.
Question, yeah. Paul.
How is this might be a little bit off topic, but how is the $435,000 that's listed in the budget under salary, benefits, termination pay, not department? How is, where does that 435,000 go? And who allocates it?
I'll take that one. That's a good question. So this is a really tricky area, and it's always a struggle for most places. That particular pool is used for 2 purposes. One is anytime an employee leaves employment with the county, if they have benefits remaining, we pay it out of that fund. And the reason we do that is, say, for example, you're a small department like Registry of Deeds, and you've got, 6 employees, but somebody who's been there for 20 years and has a ton of time on the books retires mid-year. They're going to get a pretty large severance check, which is going to completely bust their budget. And so that's why we keep it in that separate fund.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt to make sure I understand that. This is $435,000 of new expense. Do you keep a reserve? You already have a reserve for those kind of occurrences, and you're further funding that reserve with $435,000, but drawing it down also at the same time.
I wish.
have no
That's been a
reserve.
it's been a struggle for us to keep afloat, to be honest. There's another piece to this, which is we do allow employees to cash out a portion of their sick or vacation. A lot of that's baked into the union contracts. We also take that out of this fund. Because we have had a lot of employees in the past few years really hitting the retirement age, and this is something that we've kind of been able to see coming for a while, and we're sort of at the bitter end of it right now. We've had a lot of payouts lately because we've had a lot of employees who've been around a long time hitting that fund. So we fund that amount as much as we can every year and try to keep up with it. But
Are you saying the fund actually has a zero balance going into the year, and now you're going to use 435,000? Is that basically what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
I would love for it to have a balance, but it's a struggle.
I guess I'm a little surprised that your auditors don't raise it as an audit point that you should have a reserve for that, but.
They point to the general fund balances, which is what they're looking to have going to cover that if it goes negative. So as long as there's enough money in the general fund to cover that, and that's a whole nother topic we've been working on for a while around here.
Okay.
Good question.
Good question. Other questions on this section, payrolls, benefits, and the like? All right, seeing none, let's move to the last section, the 2021 salaries of employees. Really appreciate this breakdown. This also answered the question that we had. One, wanting to look at salaries for individuals, know where the negotiations. So you'll see in those columns whether they're union negotiation or how those work. And then, of course, just a salary breakout within. So I'll open it up for questions on this portion as well. So I have just a couple questions. Can you clarify when you are looking at any salary increase, is it each department that will assess the metrics they use for what we are looking at, wages and salaries? So for instance, merit pay, cost of living, is that at the department level, or are there parameters put by the county where a department will go and say, well, I can only do X amount or so much? How do those type of metrics get woven into some of these salaries?
I'll jump in, and Don, feel free to pitch it for me if I mess this up. First, the county does not pay any merit pay. We have a step table. So the step table is based on an employee gets a raise every 5 years, or it gets a merit every 5 years. Not the best solution when you try to retain employees or attract employees, but we're working on it. We do have a COLA, and January 1st, the non-union employees get their COLA, and then actually I would say union employees too, but there is the jail union, they're a July 1st union. budget year, so they get their COLA on July 1st. And the departments have no say on the COLA. The COLA is typically looked at by Alex and I on what we are seeing in terms of inflation. There's been a couple articles just today in the Press Herald that inflation's up around 5.1. I think Social Security is given an increase of 5.4%. So that comes into the equation. And Alex and I bring forth what we feel as though we can insert into the budget for COLAs for employees.
Even though the dollars are prescribed like that, do the employees get a annual written performance review, or is there a cycle for that?
Yes. That's very important.
Yeah, employees get an annual review, but it's not linked to merit pay.
Right.
It's pretty much performance and critique annually in their first 6 months.
Sorry, Don, say that again. So they will get they'll get an annual review, but they also get a performance review every 6 months. Is that what you said?
Excuse me. What they do, a new employee that's recently hired, they get a performance review at the end of their introductory or probationary period, which is the first 6 months, and then thereafter annually every year.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Bob, did I see your hand?
Yeah,
Yep,
just
go ahead.
probably doesn't have anything to do with union employees, but probably non-union employees. If you have somebody who reaches retirement age and leaves, and somebody else comes in, is there a differential in pay scale? In other words, do you look to fill that position with a less than the outgoing person's pay, or how does that work?
Want me to take that, Jim?
Sure.
That's a great question. Let's talk about non-union employees first. If we have a retiring employee or somebody who separates, whether they resign with a lot of seniority, they typically would be at a higher rate of pay. If we hire a new person, the issue we're dealing with right now is we're in a very tight labor market, and we're all competing for talent and for qualified employees. So sometimes we do have a non-union person paid plan that was done in 2013, but really doesn't work that well for us now. We're finding that we cannot hire somebody with experience, qualifications, and skills to step in and put them at the beginning rate of a pay plan, because somebody else won't come with us. So what we have to do is we have to take a look at the current market conditions and almost negotiate with them a starting pay placement. So that's how it's working right now in reality. And in fact, we have just gone out working with a consultant to do a regional market survey of some of our difficult to hire for positions, what we call our hot jobs. And there are a number of them, which probably some of your municipalities are having the same problem. We're trying to figure out where we stand, what is the market rate for certain positions at either the 25th percentile, 50th percentile, or 75th percentile, but not just local government, but also private industry. So we're competing not only with ourselves, but other private industry. So we've spent a lot of probably the last 5 or 6 months taking a look at this, to take a look at maybe revising our non-union pay plan and what we need to do to incentivize and recruit and retain people.
That's a great answer, and that's basically what I would expect it. Thank you.
And not in union employees, and I'll be brief, is that with union employees, we have 5 bargaining units. And at the beginning of every contract negotiation, which I'm the chief negotiator for all the collective bargaining, I do a salary survey. I see what we're paid, what other, whether it be corrections officers or emergency dispatchers or our patrol deputies are paying. So we know where we stand. Are we competitive? Are we falling behind? A lot of times you can tell because you're not able to hire people. So you really have to stay on top of this on an annual basis, because if you don't, you're going to find that you're not going to be able to hire people. So we do that every contract.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Paul, go ahead.
Well, you said you're going to do some comparisons to the private sector. I just wanted to add, I haven't done a lot of work in that area, that one of the tricky things I think that sometimes is overlooked is making sure that it's apples to apples, because typically the municipals has a great deal more in terms of benefits than the private sector. And if you just look at pay, you're in a tough position. Sort of correlated with that is the idea certainly on the non-union side, if you had the possibility to reduce benefits and up your pay and keep your same total where it was. I mean, survey after survey has shown that, employees much more value the dollar in their paycheck than that same dollar that you're spending in giving them a benefit. So
I think that's particularly true with younger employees, for sure.
Excellent. Any other questions on salary changes, salaries, benefit, specifically salary increases?
I'll add on a personal note for Bridgeton. You just hired away somebody today from.
Yeah.
One of our good resources, you just hired away at a salary that we could match. So.
Well, Paul, rest assured, we'll still have her tied to Bridgeton.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're happy to have her, Paul.
Yeah, you should be.
it does speak to it, though. I mean, this is the hard part we're in right now, where we've got this tight pool, and it's we find ourselves competing against each other for these, employees. I think back to 7-8 years ago, it felt like all the communities were competing for economic development. And yeah, maybe that's still there, but now it's employees.
Yeah, Bob.
So going to the union side, and particularly in law enforcement and on the jail side, if I take the military model, for the most part in the officer corps, it's up or out. So if you have a program wherein if you hire someone at an entry level position, and is there an expectation for them to advance, and is that a mechanism for retainage? In other words, we don't want you to come in here and just be the trustee at the jail. We want you to advance your career, and can you use something like that for stabilization of your workforce?
Well, let me take a stab at that one, Bob. We certainly, when we recruit, I'm going to say particularly on the correction side, it's quite a process to recruit and train and bring a new correction officer onto the floor. You've got the main criminal justice academy, but we're trying to streamline that process because younger people don't want to spend a lot of time going through a hiring process. Well, we bring them in, but we also, there's opportunities to use that as a springboard or perhaps to get into law enforcement if they'd like. They can have step movement each year when they're there. The longer they're there, they have step increases per the pay plan. There's also opportunities for other differentials and such. We also, particularly for what we would call, I don't know whether we call them green pins or brown pins, but a certified correction officer that we're able to bring in from an outside agency, we can give them pay plan placement up to like the 10-year step. So that's an incentive to bring somebody in with experience, but we can put them further up on the pay plan. And it's the same way with law enforcement. There's opportunities for advancement. for a promotion. You know, they can go from a corrections officer, after say 5 years, they can apply to become a sergeant. They can apply after that to become a lieutenant. So there is promotional opportunities on both the corrections and the law enforcement side.
But there's no requirement to say we want you to be moving up. We want you to be filling bigger shoes.
No, we encourage, I mean, obviously, the command staff there, we encourage them to challenge themselves and to continue their growth and development. But let's face it, it's not for everybody. Some of them are just content. They're content to be there, Bob, where they're at. And the other thing that we deal with, which is a tough one, is they gain seniority when they're a corrections officer. But if they seek promotion to the rank of sergeant or lieutenant beyond that, they lose that seniority and they may find themselves on a less favorable work shift, working overnights or whatever. So a lot of them don't do that because of family commitment. So there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
It's certainly things we're looking at because it is a succession planning limiting factor. So we're trying to work with the unions to figure out how we can encourage people to seek promotion rather than a detriment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Any final questions, comments, thoughts? I'll just say over anything that is in that first part of that packet over the 4 areas that we've had. Any final comments, questions, things for the committee here? Jim, Alex, any final things for the information that you provided, which again, we do appreciate. This is great info that just helps guide us, moving forward. But any last points or any things that we would need to know before we move on?
No, I think the information is self-explanatory. The questions that you've asked have been great. So I appreciate that. And thank you, Don, for being with us to answer some of those. No, I'm good. But, we'll always take questions around this topic over our time period. It's not a one and done here.
Right. Yeah. There may be more that are going to come up as we continue to review, but this is helpful.
Sure.
All right, committee. Let's move on then to the, it says third, the overview of questions for our 5 departments as we look to our October meeting. The vision I sort of had as we move into this next phase, one, I want to sort of remind us what we had last meeting, just some key pieces. And then we'll look at each of the top 5 budgets that had been laid out from the last meeting. We'll start with the sheriff's office and go through. This is a little bit of a brainstorming opportunity. So this is where we can definitely ask questions, but if there are questions that would be better answered for a department head to come in, we'll make note of those. And then at the end here, we'll plan on figuring out which departments we want to come in for that 20th meeting. I'm assuming we would want all of them. Maybe we decide we've had enough questions answered on a particular one of the top 5. We may not need them. So at any rate, as we get to the end, we'll get there. So let me just say again, as Jim, you had said in your presentation, the budget focus for this year, salaries, health insurance, taxes and tax stabilization, and ARPA funds, correct? Those are the 4 really focuses of the budget going into this year. And Lee, I appreciate the questions that you asked prior to coming here, especially about the excess funds. That was a great breakdown. And so, Alex, thank you for answering that, just explaining the general fund balance and how that works. So let's just start with, we'll pull the budget out and we'll open to the sheriff's office, and we'll start there. We'll just start with opening questions. As you're doing that, were there any other comments, questions, thoughts about Alex's answers to Lee's questions? I thought they were great, but I didn't know if there was if anybody wanted an opportunity just to follow up on those. Good. All right, let's open to just the sheriff's office. And we'll start with the administration piece. So my apologies, I got multiple things in front of me. In terms of the administration piece, for the committee, questions that you may have, and then if there's anything that Jim, Alex, you say, you know what, department head would be really good at answering this, we'll make note of it, and definitely we'll bring them in. But committee, administration, questions that you have. Yes, Jocelyn, go ahead.
Let's see here. I had a question about a wellness initiative that I saw under the professional services. And this puts the budget up a good amount, and I just was interested in what that was.
And Jocelyn, are you referring to 6301-05, that the wellness initiative under professional services, that specific area?
Yep.
Jim or Alex, if you want to just sort of reiterate, was there any specific question, Jocelyn, or just what is this wellness initiative?
Yeah, I just want to know what it is. Like, I'm like that it's a $10,000 increase, and I would just be interested because it's under, especially what it's underneath here, as far as a polygraph and psych tests and all this other stuff. I would just be interested what this actually means.
This was a request from the sheriff, and there wasn't really a baked game plan behind it, but it was conceptually putting $10,000 in for a psychologist, and that was for sheriff's deputies to be able to talk to someone after an event, I'm looking at it, we cut that, even though it shows up as a 10,000. If you look, the total budget request is 11,300. So
yeah,
that item was cut just because there wasn't a good game plan, but also the county has invested in a more robust EAP program. And through that EAP program, they provide law enforcement services, which I don't believe the sheriff's office was fully aware of. There was a little education there for the sheriff and his captains around the services that our current EAP provider provides to the county. So the 1,000 was ultimately cut.
and I guess I have one more question about that. Do these folks that this was intended for, are they insured? Do they have health insurance?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have for that.
Any other questions? A couple questions for me, if there are others who are thinking. The expectation is said, when we go back to that first page, of course, it shows revenues, the 2022 55K. The max revenue has been in 2019 37,000. What's the expectation that's going to increase the revenue? 55,000. Am I reading that correctly? And so the question is, what's causing that budget revenue to jump as it's shown here?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. It has been down the past few years. What that comes into, it's a real smorgasbord of smaller amounts that typically come in and can be pretty highly variable over time. It takes the form of things like FOA requests that can sometimes have a lot of dollars attached to them and sometimes not much at all. It takes the form of records requests. It takes the form of transcript requests. And a grab bag of about a half dozen revenues. It's a very variable line item because it really, couple of big cases can boost that right up. No, it's been down the past few years. It's not one we've dropped just yet, but it may have to be down the road.
Gotcha. Do you know what the 2021 revenue is at this point? Of course, we know that there's this sort of gap. So do you know what 2021 is showing as of right now, year to date, in terms of revenue for Sheriff's Office?
If I can get our accounting software to open, I will be able to answer that. Give me one sec. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
No, that's all right. As you're doing that, you sort of answered another question, because there's a projected revenue page, and FOIA fees were one of my questions. So FOIA fees are placed in this revenue stream. They're not in something like the registrar or anything. This is where you put all FOIA requests or fees or things like that. That's where this ends up.
That's where the ones related to the sheriff's office end up. And those tend to be the lion's, well, yeah, they tend to be the most reliable ones. Those are the ones that are more of a steady stream. Within the executive department, we get them here and there. The dispatch center actually gets them pretty regularly, but they're not particularly ones that cost a lot. There's a lot of requests for transcripts that come out of the dispatch. Think about it in the 911 log. But those don't typically add up because when those get requested, more often than not, they've already been provided to the district attorney. So that's how that works.
Okay, excellent.
I'm going to have to fight with the VPN, but I will get you that answer otherwise in just a moment here while I fiddle with the computer.
That's all right. I'll just mark it. We'll come back to it. Bob, did I see your hand quickly? Did you have? Oh, sorry. Right. Yep. Any other questions?
Actually, I think I had another question. Sorry.
Go ahead, Justin. Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was unmuted. I hope I wasn't making noises. The training, education, and seminar, that budget increased quite a bit. And I'm wondering about that. That's, it's 6512-05. It's 6512, yeah, I said that right.
Yep. Okay.
Well,
Are you talking with-
the 2021 adopted budget is $20,000 and the 2022 is remaining flat at $22,000.
Okay, so I guess I'm just confused by these numbers because this actual expense 2304, what is that saying?
That is the amount that we actually spent during 2020.
Okay,
Oh,
but then,
COVID.
Yeah,
oh, I see. Oh, okay, that makes more sense now.
Yeah.
And so you budgeted for 20,000, you only spent 2,300. Where did the rest of the money go?
it probably folded into undesignated fund balance at the end of the year, or maybe we allowed the sheriff's office to buy a piece of equipment that wasn't budgeted, but was needed.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Offset
Thank you.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Question, Jocelyn, yeah. Question I had, so when you go back to wages and salaries, there is 30K, it says 30K in wages and 1,000 on call, 1,000 per night, and FOIA clerk for 30,000. But the preliminary has removed it, so that means that you folks felt it wasn't necessary, or you didn't. I'm just curious, what was your rationale for saying we don't need to see that in this year's budget?
Well, the $30,000 was for a FOIA clerk. It was largely based on the sheriff's office wishes to go with body cameras and cruiser cameras. And that is a discussion that the sheriff has had with the commissioners, but the project is not fully baked at this point. And timing of it all is unknown. And the number, I think it was to implement just body cameras, I think it was around $110,000, $120,000, just body cameras, and then another $110,000, $120,000 to outfit all of our vehicles with vehicle cameras. So it's some significant dollars. We really want to have a better program or a presentation of the benefits. But I think just a little bit more work needs to be done. And so that I didn't feel comfortable putting in a position that was going to start July 1st in the budget. And so I cut it.
Gotcha.
Then the $1,000 was to increase the on-call pay by $100 per week. I didn't think that was necessary, so I cut that too.
Gotcha. Excellent. Quick question about the body cameras. Maybe give me some insight. I have heard that the version that is most advantageous are the ones where body cameras are initially on, that turn on as soon as either a gun or a taser is drawn. Are those the body cameras that are in discussions, or is it another version?
No, those are the exact ones. Yep.
Gotcha. Other questions? If not, I'll keep spouting off. Yeah, Lee, go ahead.
Sorry, I've been quiet. You guys have asked all my questions tonight, so it's been good. But I guess on the topic of the undesignated funds, does the county allow for encumbrances? So, I mean, I guess like I'm used to the municipal world. I'm guessing the county does not, but I was wondering how that process works if it does.
No, we do not, much to the dismay of the departments.
Okay.
And the manager.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so no is the answer, and that works perfect for me, actually. No need for further discussion if no is the answer.
Thank you, because, you know, you can see the
Yeah.
daggers coming my way right now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
I'm not
no
very
problem.
popular for that at year end, but I stick to it.
Yeah. Well, none of us are, right? So it's okay.
Other questions? I did have one question. 613105 gas, oil, and grease. The only question I had is, I recognize that probably the 2020 actual expense does have some COVID pandemic relation to it. 2019 actual was also very low, under the 2020 actual. So sort of explain to me the process of figuring that line item out, where you're budgeting extremely high, but you're coming in pretty low. And again, I don't have 3 more years previous to that, so there may be something I'm missing, but just explain that a little bit.
Yeah, I can jump into that a little bit. Part of that is that the administrative group it has a pretty small number of vehicles. What we're really run into, and we've been working to fix that in 2021 to get it going there correctly. We've been running into an issue where when the cards that are used for the sheriff in particular were coded, it was putting it into the next department down, law enforcement, and I think somebody who set up those cards. What occurs is, for the county, instead of having a central source for gasoline, because again, that just won't work, they use the WEX cards and they go to, they use that card at whatever gas stations take them. So I apologize for that. That is a coding issue. It was going down into the next budget over. And yeah, that came up in the budget discussions internally as well.
Excellent. Okay, no, appreciate the clarity on that. That helps.
Yeah. That being said, it is also showing those numbers have been coming in under lately. And that has a lot to do with, until very recently, the somewhat precipitous decline in gas prices.
Yeah. Yeah. Which there's another point where I think I had a question about. The price of gas was done at $2.60. Should any attempts be made to consider that gas prices may increase, or is the $2.60 mark something that you sort of settle on and say that's an average, that's as good as we're going to get in terms of how we budget for the price of gas?
I'll say that it is a line item I am more nervous about than most, to be honest. We're going with that. Keep in mind that's without the taxes, because we aren't going to have that going in there. Yeah,
Fair. Yeah, no, I know.
That's-
You can't
a
control
little nervous
everybody.
about that one. Yes.
Understandable. All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions, folks? Bob, yeah, I see a hand.
Quick one on, is there any opportunity to buy a contract for once a year you negotiate with WEX or somebody for so many gallons of fuel at a particular price point? And the same thing with heating the buildings, I guess, that's as a larger question. I know.
You can typically do that when you have your own municipal tanks and pumps. But our reliance on independently owned gas stations, it's just not feasible. Because we could be at an Irving at one deputy could be at an Irving and the other could be at a Shell. So it's not that easy.
That being
But we
said, on
do-
the building side, we definitely lock in and have done quite well with it.
We have the natural gas contracts and we have all contracts for the commodities outside of gasoline and diesel.
Any other questions? One thing I'll ask as people are thinking, Jim, just help me out with sort of down the road. When we do recommendations as a committee, my vision is that as we get towards the end, we're collecting our information. As we get towards the end, we'll go through each and we will vote to either to change certain pieces and give our what's under FC budget, and we'll go through each one, or how do we proceed with sort of giving a final recommendation? I know we're not there yet, but as we're getting this information, should folks sort of mark if we mark places they want to talk about and consider amending or consider sending on to the next stage?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, there isn't the line item veto. It's a bottom adjustment. So if you don't feel as though the sheriff office should be up $100,000, you can make a recommendation that maybe $85,000 is appropriate. But you don't say you need to cut gas and oil to get there. You let us figure that out. Am I off base on that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, no, you're not. Sorry, got that backwards. Certainly what we are looking for is, yes, a number to be recommended by the Finance Committee. And certainly if there are specific line items that the Finance Committee does drill down on and want to make a specific recommendation, they are absolutely allowed to do that and discuss that amongst themselves. But there's a lot of freedom there for the Finance Committee on that particular front.
All right. So I say that only because as we go through, committee members, if you want to make notes as we maybe come to our final meeting, my vision is we'll go through the whole thing and we'll make sure we get those recommendations out. We'll vote on what we want to send off. So that's why I'm asking is if it is line item, I don't want to miss the conversations we've had if there are recommendations we want to discuss. So at any rate, thank you. That's just trying to think down the road a bit.
Dustin, can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
As we talked about last meeting, we were going to invite departments in on the 20th. I think we pinpointed 5 departments. The current process that we're going through is raising questions, and Alex and I are picking these off and answering them for you. How do you want to move through this? Do you want us to stop answering the questions and let the questions stand so that the departments can answer them next week? Or do you want to continue to go through the question and answer process like we've been doing for the last couple of minutes?
Depends on how the committee feels. I don't want to stifle committee members who are really getting their questions answered. Again, mostly because if the committee feels we don't need to have someone come in and to have them take time off to do so, if we feel confident as a committee to sort of bring a recommendation, I'm fine with that. But committee members, maybe you can weigh in before we keep moving on. Bob? Yeah.
I'm new to the county budget, and so on some level, I'm trying to gain a basis of knowledge so that while I may not be very helpful this year, next year I might be able to have some real input. And so I guess on some level, I'm respectful of having the department heads come in and give me an overview of, this is how much money I need to operate. However, I have these needs that are unfunded, so I guess I'm trying to get a better understanding of the budget itself. And, maybe I might say to one department, we need to cut we need to cut the budget of this department so we can give the other departments some more money. Making sense?
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I sort of feel the same way. I would like to get an overview. I don't think that on any specific one, we're gonna have sort of enough detailed questions that would really, take up a significant amount of time. And we will have a scattershot of questions. But, again, Jim and Al, they're answering questions now, and I don't want them to duplicate. I mean, I don't even mind moving past that and waiting for those few questions, but more what I would like to get out of the department heads appearing is that idea of what their goals are, what their priorities are, what they see kind of as the real challenges that are buried in these numbers, and sort of the, in the old world I came from, I would always ask people like, well, if you had 10% more in your budget, what would you spend it on? If you had 10% less in your budget, what would you cut? I mean, that kind of thinking to see where people are with their departments.
Fair enough.
So-
That's great guidance. That's what I needed. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Bob and Paul, is this process helpful to sort of, again, get an overview why things are happening? And thus, if we brought department heads in, we can sort of ask the future questions, the visionary questions. So is this process helpful to sort of get into these weeds a bit?
Oh, yeah. I love getting in the weeds. So.
I thought that. So my assessment, Jim and Alex, is we actually are really appreciative that you can answer these questions. This gives us that framework that many of us who are new to the process need, so that we can have a department head sort of just tell us a little bit more of the 30,000-foot view, and give us the tour, if you will, on the lay of the land. So this to me is helpful. It answers those questions, gets them out of the way, so that I can ask maybe very pinpointed questions and not take up too much time. But Jocelyn, did you have something that you wanted to say? I thought you were.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin. I wasn't actually sure how long this meeting was going to go, so I apologize. I actually have an appointment at 7 that I need to leave for. But I'm going to send an email with some questions that I just generated. So my apologies that I have to duck out early, but I'm going to just send some extra thoughts.
We also are videotaping this, so this will be up on.
Oh, great. Okay, great. All right, well, I'm sending those, and thank you very much, everybody, and it was good to see you.
Yes, thank you, Jocelyn. Appreciate it. And yeah, I'm cognizant of time. The only things I was going to go through is the rest of the sheriff's communication facilities, the DAs, and the IT. And if there was any questions, we're not going to go crazy, but we're just going to do those top 5. So any other, Jim, is that helpful? Alex, is that helpful to sort of vision out where we're
That's
going?
great. That's great.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right, committee members, we'll just move into the sheriff law enforcement. If there's any questions there, go ahead and rattle them off. First question I have for you guys, again, wages, salaries, 5120-06. There was a request for a full-time detective. You folks felt maybe not so much. Can you just explain sort of the thought process there? What your intention was, because it says full-time detective. Curious what you had talked about or what your thought was.
I guess I'm trying to find. I didn't go
Page
far.
78.
Yeah. The sheriff asked for a full-time detective, which would be paid 50% out of the general fund and 50% out of a potential grant. This detective would aid in the domestic violence unit that is embedded within the district attorney's office. We already have one detective down there. There was no guarantees of the grant. And I kind of went into this budget with a 0 position increase. And so I kind of held my grounds on this and got it.
Gotcha. Good. Thank you for that clarity. Yeah. Other questions from the committee? Yeah, Paul.
Well, and I think I'll hold it for when the sheriff is in, because I really was really kind of a general question about the amount of overtime and what that means for what real true staffing should be, and you know, whether we're filling with obviously a lot of extra pay. And so I'll save that question as maybe a discussion around staffing in general.
I think that's perfectly fine. I'll make a note of it. I'm curious as well. So good question.
I've made a note to give the sheriff a heads up that it's coming at him.
Yeah. Good. Line item 6, ammunition. There's a massive jump in 2019. So what's changed? Is it more firearms training now? When you look at 2019, your actual was $7,000, and now in 2019 it's 44 grand and 55. Have we done more live ammunition training, or is it the cost has skyrocketed? Oh, it's the second cost. Okay.
Cost has skyrocketed, same training, just crazy money for it.
Gotcha.
And they tried to go inexpensive a few years ago, and that did not go well.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll just go over to there's a rest of budget under sheriff, which is the civil division. Sorry, that's my notes. Rest of budget is civil division. So Jim, maybe you can help me. So the Cumberland County Jail budget, that's done in conjunction with you and the sheriff, or is that done how does that fit into this as we're moving through?
The Cumberland County Jail budget is a budget that Alex and I work on, as well as the sheriff and his captains work on, and the major. And we kind of combine our heads late May of every year through the month of June in preparation of presenting it to the county commissioners. Because of the timing of it all, much like the cross insurance arena budget, it is something that goes directly to the county commissioners for workshops and a final authorization or approval of the budget. We put it in here just so that the finance committee can understand what the budgets look like. They're, in a sense, 3 months into it, their current budget.
Maybe I could jump in with a little history on this as to why that occurred and why it ended up on a fiscal year. Seems like a good time for it if you want.
Please, yeah.
In 2008, 2009, the state of Maine enacted legislation that created what was called the Board of Corrections, which added some state funding to the county jails in exchange for more state control over the jails through an entity called the Board of Corrections. One of their requirements, or two of their requirements, was that all the county jails had to shift to a fiscal year, because that would tie better to the state budget, regardless of whether that worked for the counties or not. And the other piece was that, and this is just an aside, that we'd have to use their chart of accounts, not our own chart of accounts. The state Board of Corrections lasted until 2015, when it was disbanded. Yeah, the state does still provide funding, but has backed away from attempting to take ownership of county jails in the same manner. But it means that we are still on a fiscal year budget for that jail. The reason we have not shifted it back to a calendar year is because we're really looking more at shifting the county to a fiscal year as well anyways. So it would make more sense to move the county where the other two branches are than go the other direction. Everyone hates it when I give history lessons, but that seemed like a good time for it.
I love history. What you talking about? I love it. Paul, go ahead.
All that said, the presentation's in obviously in a different format. And really, there's an item in there, contract special services for 3.6 million, which is a $377,000 increase.
That's medical.
What's that?
That we contract out for medical at the jail. So
It's like its own little mini hospital down there for all the
Yeah.
inmates.
So the increase is, wow, well, the increase is 377,000.
There are two factors to that. One is the increased nurse staffing costs, which has skyrocketed trying to get them in the past year. Two, and this is an interesting one that we are experiencing and really a little ominous. Because the county jail has to pay for all of its own medications, it doesn't, the inmates don't have insurance. It's truly its own self-funded. If we start to see an increase in inmates with certain very expensive medications, it has a major hit on the budget. Two areas where we're seeing massive increase, well, not massive, because it only takes a few inmates to do this, are hepatitis C and HIV, which are both diseases that are often caused by sharing of needles. Sharing of needles occurs due to the opioid epidemic. It's why we're really pushing hard on medically assisted treatment and doing everything we can, because this is a part of the opioid epidemic that, to be honest, we were surprised we held off for as long as we did, but it started to really hit us in the past year or two. And it is a massive budget amount when those inmates come through.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, thank you for explaining that, because I had the same question. I was curious as well.
Yeah.
Other questions on, yeah, Bob?
That's talk the whole medical. Is there any impetus to bring those contracted services in-house so that we might have better control over the costs there?
Me?
Well, it's a tough call, and I guess I would say that we are not skilled in the medical field, and there's a lot to go behind the scenes when you talk in the medical field, plus add on a medical field within a jail. You also, by going with a national organization, you gain the capacity of that organization, that they have signed a contract with you for a certain number of nurses. And so if they need to relocate nurses from outside the state and temporarily relocate them up here, they need to do that by contract. If we were to have our own medical staff and we lost 2 or 3 nurses, we'd be out putting an advertisement in the Press Herald, looking for nurses. So there's a lot of benefits, even with that number being so large. I doubt we could probably trim that number too much if we took it on ourselves.
Generally speaking, no jail with, say, more than 30, 40 inmates will do their own medical. As soon as it gets up to where they start to need any kind of full-time staff, they contract it out.
Yeah, all right.
Good question, though. Other questions specifically on anything with the sheriff's budget overall? All right. We'll move to the communication CCRC, which Alex, you had said, or Jim, you had said, this is the largest or one of the largest piece of the budget, or maybe I heard that wrong. Is that true?
It's one of the departments that is large. I think our largest budget is going to be the sheriff's office.
It's the sheriff. Okay, so I heard that wrong. Yeah. All right. At any rate, questions on that? Sorry, while I'm trying to find that page.
What page is it? When you find it, tell me the number.
The detail page is page 104.
104. All right, page 104. Any questions here? The only one I'll throw out, make sure I have it correct. Hang on. Yeah, the only question I had, 6512 training education and seminars. Your preliminary had taken out the 20K, but it was requested for an additional 20. So the budget request was 52. But you had put it back to 32, which was adopted in 2021. Give me a little clarity what the rationale was, or why you're looking to keep it at the 30. What was the training that they were looking for?
I'll jump in on that. They were looking to do, they were feeling initially that they were going to need additional for all the things they wanted to do. And while obviously 2020 number is, not useful at all for that training line, prior years had not shown that that additional amount was something they had, as hard as they might try and as much as they might want to send people to as much training as possible. There's only so many hours in a day, days in a week, and so many trainings they can get to. So we were not saying to them, no, you can't send people to training. What we were saying to them is, send people to whatever you think is appropriate, but we just don't think you're going to spend that much.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions on this?
One thing people are thinking, I was just talking about the part-time staff up at the top. You'll see a significant decrease. That's because the new director and I have worked through whether we really want to have those part-time staff members. The previous director kind of wanted to have a bullpen that he could create with part-timers, and when a full-time position opened up, he'd have 3 or 4 people that might be interested in moving out of part-time up to full-time. That necessarily hasn't been the way it's worked. What we're finding is that we have full-timers that want to back off on hours and go back down to part-time. However, with the current laws circling around health benefits, that full-timer goes down to part-time, and we're only getting 20, 25 hours from the person, but we need to provide them full health insurance because they had enough hours the preceding year. So that really flipped that whole game plan upside down when that came through within the last couple of years. So we are weeding part-timers out of that department.
Excellent.
We'll
Okay,
have
thank you.
per diems. We do
Okay.
allow some per diems that were not full-timers to work in the facility, and that's what the $5,000 budget's for.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Other questions? All right, seeing none, let's move on to facilities. Anybody has that page number? You go ahead and throw it out there.
I live in this thing. I can get there fast.
56.
There. All right. Thank you. Questions on facilities for this committee? Lee, I think I saw your hand.
So- Yeah. So my understanding is there's a new facilities director. Is that what I gained from the questions there? And he's trying to streamline some of the line items. Is that or he's creating new line items, I guess, in the parking garage. Can you explain that? I guess he's breaking some stuff out. Can you just explain that to the group, I guess, so he or she doesn't have to do it in the meeting?
Sure. Well, historically, over the last, I'd say 5 to 8 years, the facilities department had oversight of the parking garage. Even though the garage still falls underneath the executive budget to some extent in our financial software. But the garage was never really fully baked in terms of what the costs were within that building. And so the new director has worked with his staff and stripping out the costs that were historically paid for out of the facilities budget, but the garage benefited from those costs, those lines. He stripped that money out and has removed it from the facilities and put it over into the garage, just to better reflect what the garage is spending on an annual basis. And so you'll see some line items decrease in the facilities budget. You'll see line items increase in the garage budget.
Appreciate that. So, and again, so that'll lead me to my question. There's been in terms of wages and salaries, I noted a dip over the past few years, yet the budget request is up 1.1. Do you know why you're sort of seeing that wage dip? Are you losing individuals, or what is that attributed to?
Well, I don't think we're losing any individuals. We have some vacancies within the department, but we're not losing. And I can't any cuts out there. I do know that we've had some senior members retire over the last number of years. For instance, just in the facilities director position, I think we probably saved $20,000 between the longstanding director that was there since the early 90s to the new director that came in. So there's savings there, and we've had a number of maintenance people that have retired that have had some seniority too.
Gotcha.
For many years, the facilities budget was never a budget that was down people, that if somebody left, typically their replacement would already be in place. The past couple of years, that's really changed, and this has been a department that we have struggled to keep at full status. It's just a sign of the times.
For this particular thing, the employee benefits and taxes as a percent of wages and salary are 47%. It stands out compared to the other departments. Would there be a reason why they would have that much more relative to their salary in terms of benefits?
Yes. What's doing that is our custodians. So we have a number of night custodians, particularly for the courthouse and other facilities. Their rate of pay is quite low. So there's a bunch of them not making a particularly high rate of pay, but they're taking health insurance, and oftentimes they are taking full family. And that's the big driver there, is you've got a bunch of those people with that low wage, high benefits, and that's the real driver there. It's very noticeable. But we get night custodians, so.
Bob, I saw your hand as well.
Facility seems like an excellent area to be subbing, contracts out for services. Is there any consideration for some of that? Because in particular, custodial staff or electrical, or is it a security question paramount to these buildings?
We have talked numerous times over the last number of years about farming out for custodial work. We not only do the custodial work for our side of the courthouse, but we do the state side, also the courtrooms and all, under a contract. When the county went out to bid, just prior to myself arriving as an employee, there wasn't much difference between what it would cost from a private contractor to what the county was paying at the time. However, there has been a salary survey done back, I think around 2015, 2016, where the custodians were brought up. Their wages were brought up because they were significantly below market at that time. And so we've always thought that it was maybe if we put it out to bid now, that things would be different because of that increase in salary. We started kicking the tires last fall around that. And we talked to a couple of companies and they said, don't even put it out because we're so short-staffed. We can't keep up with what we're doing right now. And so we put that idea on hold. Electricians, we have been down an electrician for probably a year and a half, if not 2 years. We typically have 2 electricians at the courthouse and 1 down at the jail. We have brought in to offset and add some capacity. We brought in a local company on a service contract, time and materials bid to help us out and fill that void. But you're right. Where we can, we do farm out and contract for service.
Excellent. Other questions on facilities? And again, if they're coming in for the 20th meeting, I think I had some questions too on their special projects in there, but I'd be curious to sort of ask them, what's their plan? What are they thinking? But I can say that for the 20th as well. Let's move on to district attorney and then we'll do IT. So district attorney. Anybody know that page? I think it's page 34. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Good deal. All right, committee members, questions on DA?
So I got a quick question. The number of part-time employees show as 6, 1, and 1, and the total shows as 7.
Let me make a note. My bad. That's the interns, and I know what the issue there is. They added one for a specific purpose at one point. I'll correct that.
Good catch. Thank you, Paul. Any other questions?
Yeah, restorative justice at 40,000. Is that an outsourced payment? Is that goes to? I looked at the detail and I couldn't. It's a complete outsourced contract. Is that what that says? Is that what that means?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a person or a firm that's skilled in restorative justice platform per se, that we gain greater capacity going out to a firm than having a single individual.
This is a really important topic for our district attorney and one I think he'd love to talk to you all about.
Well, I've got it marked here for the 20th. I'd love to bring them in and sort of get an idea as to what that is. So I absolutely would love to hear more. So absolutely. Any other questions? I thought I had one. I noted here diminishing revenue on the collected fees. So at the top, there's been a diminishing revenue collection, but you're budgeting for 165. Any clarity on what's causing that diminish? Or what is happening sort of there?
Yep.
Okay.
That's a COVID one. So what's occurring is the court systems aren't processing people. That revenue comes from our deferred disposition program. And what that is that somebody who is, say, a first-time offender can be given the opportunity to go into a deferred disposition where they are monitored over, say, a 12 or 18-month period and pay a fee to the district attorney's office for that monitoring. That's a program that actually up until 2020 had been expanding with time. It's a great program in that is a person who also may find themselves in the jail otherwise and can avoid that with that program. So it's determined by the district attorney, by the judges, for that person to be eligible. They blow it, they're out of the program. With the backlog in the courts, that simply hasn't been something possible. So we are leaving the line as it is and hope that things return to normal someday.
Gotcha. Because of that backlog, have you had individuals, first-time offenders, staying in jail longer? Like, where are they then in that process? If there's a backlog and they can't be deferred into that program, what is happening now?
Just staying longer,
They're staying longer. No.
unfortunately.
Okay. And when you say first-time offenders, that's for any offense, or the DA and the judge work out what that limit or what that cap is for that first-time offense? Okay.
Case by case basis, absolutely.
Any other questions for this DA section?
We want to save money, put an ankle bracelet on and send them home.
We do that too.
Yeah.
As much as humanly possible.
Yep.
We have a contract with Maine Pretrial Services, and they do the ankle monitoring, and I think the sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but we have upwards of maybe 150, 200 potential inmates out of the jail through the Maine Pretrial Service contract.
They periodically provide us with numbers of basically number of, the term that you'll hear down at the jail a lot is bed days. And what that means is one inmate, one night counts as a bed day. And they track the number of days potentially saved by doing those ankle monitors. And it's a mind-blowing number. It is just huge amounts that are saved from being in the jail via that program.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to just talk about, and it's more for information, background information for the committee. The district attorney's office is a unique department in that there are 20 assistant district attorneys, which are the lawyers within the department. They're all state employees. Those employees are within our office space. We provide desks, computers for them. We provide them everything, but their paycheck comes from the state of Maine. We then have 36 employees, or whatever the number is, somewhere in the 34 to 36 range. Employees that are county employees, district attorney department. And those individuals support the 20 ADAs, whether they're trial assistants, whether they're restitution clerks, support staff. So it's a very unique department. I just wanted to relay that on to you. It's a staff of 56 down there, but 20 of them are state employees.
It's good to know.
Yeah. No, that's great. I appreciate that. All right. If no more, let's move on to the last one. We'll go to IT. Anybody know that page?
45.
45. Committee members, any questions on this IT?
I'm surprised the staff is so small.
So isn't the
Right.
director.
That's that one.
Would it be worth asking the director kind of the vision for how to promote increased folks in that department? Or is that something where they're going to try to hold with what they have?
We have talked extensively around adding an additional person, but it really comes down to us bringing on additional towns using the GIS services that we provide. We bring in, so we would contract with towns to offset an additional salary, and that person would be a kind of a GIS/webmaster for us. But through our assessing program, we do offer GIS services for some towns for doing their mappings and their online presence.
Gotcha.
But we're just not there yet to make it cost feasible.
This is also an area where simply staffing the folks we've got is tough and keeping them. There's a lot of competition for that right now.
We've just hired 2 new help desks. One came out of Texas, one came out of Alaska, and a new network manager just came out of Key West. So I don't get why the guy came out of Key West. I don't know here, but it seems like we can't hire any IT people around here. We just have to go halfway across the United States to get someone.
Yeah, Key West is going underwater.
All right, committee members, any other questions on IT? All right. Well, I think we've covered every single of the larger budgets that I have down. Committee members, am I missing any? Jim, Alex, am I missing any that are all that top number? I'm just going with the list we made last time. But committee members or Jim and Alex, was there any that we want to peruse tonight?
I think you got all 5 that we made the list on.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Well, cognizant of time as well. The only thing that I sort of wanted to do before we adjourn is I wanted to make sure that the committee's in agreement that we're going to bring either all of these individuals, all of the department heads for all these departments in, or a discussion. Was there any that we don't need? I'm assuming all, but I want to leave it up to committee. And then all I'll do is I'll take a motion to just formalize and bring all of them in for our meeting on the 20th. But committee members, are you looking for all of them, or are there ones that you say probably don't need? Yeah, Bob.
It would be helpful for me to listen to all 5, just for the background.
Yeah, that's fine. Any other thoughts? Others feel? Yeah, Lee.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even if it's just an overview of wants and needs, I mean, it's still helpful for the budget process. Yeah, no, I think all of them is where I'd like to go.
Excellent. Yeah, Bob.
Just to follow it up, it's helpful for me to report back out to my own community, what the wants and needs are, and maybe the conversation can be sparked, well, how can we collaborate?
Yeah, good call. All right, excellent. Well then, seeing as how we're sort of in agreement that we want all of the individuals, all the departments we've talked about tonight, let me just entertain a motion to bring in all top 5 departments that we oversaw today, which include Sheriff's Office, community, the CCRC, Facilities, District Attorney, and IT. I'll entertain a motion for all 5 of those.
So moved.
Lee has moved. Second. Bob has seconded. I'll take discussion, but I think it's pretty. I'll open it. Sounds good. I'll close it. Let's take a roll call vote. Bob.
Aye.
Paul.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Motion moves 4-0. So we will bring all 5 of those department heads in for our October 20th meeting and get to hear some great insight on what's moving forward. I think that's really all the business we need to conduct, unless committee members, there's anything outstanding, anything left. All right, then this is just a reminder that we've already voted on a meeting on the 20th, again at 5:30. Same time, same place, same bat channel. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
Bob,
moved.
I see a second on that.
Second.
Paul, I'll give it to you this time. So motion to adjourn by Bob, seconded by Paul. Let's take a roll call vote. Bob.
Aye.
Paul.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Go
Thank
get
you.
some rest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Good night.